Greetings, trumpet players. Today we are going to talk about one of the, we won't call it a rule, but guidelines that I use with my students, a truism that I teach my students. Basically, what I tell them is that listening to music is more important than practicing. And this is something that I wouldn't have believed when I was, 15 years old. I don't think if anybody ever told me this, I would not have believed them. But my career, looking back, not just at my own progress, but at the progress of my students and a lot of famous people talking into my life at clinics and workshops and master classes, reading the old downbeat magazines and stuff like that. You kind of get an idea that the people who are the best listeners are also the ones that are the best players. I'll never forget one time when we had, as a guest soloist, the entire Empire Brass come over. And I remember they gave a master class, and it's a little foggy in my head now because it was many, many years ago. But they came over, gave a master class, and they were talking about, this is when CDs had just come out, and they were talking about how fortunate we were to live in a time when we could have digital reproductions of classical music. And they were going on and on about how important it was to listen. And I'm thinking, that's really odd. That was the first time I had ever heard this before. I was in college by that time. And later I'm looking at the downbeat magazines, and it just seemed like my favorite musicians, when they ever did those listening tests at the end of the magazine, my favorite musicians were always the ones who could tell exactly who they were listening to on each of those tests. And so, yes, as I grew older, I realized that everybody I know who's a great player listens to music all the time, specifically music of great musicians, and specifically for my trumpet class, I want my students to listen to trumpet players, especially at the beginning, and great trumpet players. That's why on my website I have listening lists, assignments for the students to listen to. That's there for them. I don't mind other people coming and listening to the videos. Of course, that's why I make it public. But it's not there for you. It's there for my students, because I want them to hear these great musicians. And the listening list that I use on my website always has video of the person playing, where there's only very few exceptions. It always has video so you can see and hear. So anyway, I believe that we need to listen, and it's more important than practicing, because if we practice without hearing it first, it's a waste of time. I really believe that practicing without listening is a complete waste of time. And I've seen it. If you spend a lot of time listening, it reduces the amount of time it takes you to practice. Now, that can be specific listening. If you're working on a concerto, you can spend time listening to that concerto. But it also involves general listening. If you're trying to work on your sound, then you should be listening to trumpet players who have a great sound. If you are working on phrasing, then you should listen to trumpet players who have great phrasing. Now, we have opportunities still today to listen to musicians live. That's always the best. And at the pinnacle of that is listening to musicians next to you. If you get hired to do a performance with trumpet players that play much better than you do, that is the best listening you can possibly do. Even though they may not be as good as the greats elsewhere in the country, there's nothing better than sitting next to somebody who's better than you are. So yes, I believe that when we practice, It is mainly a process of working out what you've heard. And if you haven't heard anything, what are you going to work out? What are you going to accomplish in that practice session if you don't know where you're going yet? Okay, so yes, I do believe that listening is more important than practicing. That's not to say that you shouldn't practice. Of course you need to practice. All right? But the need for more time to practice when you don't listen is tremendous. You can't possibly compete with the people who are listening. There's not enough time in the day to compete against the people who are listening. So that's what I want to leave you with today. Listening is more important than practicing. God bless you guys. We'll see you on the next video.